Hey there berries, welcome to the support 13.7 tier list. The patch comes out on the 5th of April and this is a overall patch rundown of what the changes are happening to support, plus what we're going to go into a tier list afterwards and all the support champions, and the tier list as always is targeted if you are plat, ELO or under, so that's unranked to plat. Okay. It's just because that the powers of the champions change quite a lot once you start entering into high elo, and some of the more mechanical champions actually end up being slightly better. As always, if you like this kind of content, the support content, be sure to subscribe. I do tier lists every 2 weeks, and I also upload lots of support content and stream lots of support content as well, both on the YouTube stream and on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. Now that the introduction is done, let's go into the nitty gritty of this patch, and honestly, in terms of support, there isn't a huge amount to really go through. So we've got an Annie nerf. It says it's for mid, but it's not for mid, it's actually more like for support, so that's a bit of a graphic error. We've got some nerfs coming into AP carry Veigar. If you were coming across that in your games, Veigar is getting nerfed by quite a significant amount. I'm quite upset by it actually, because I didn't mind playing AP carry Veigar when I was assigned AD. And also Zeri is getting nerfed, so if you've been seeing either of those champions a lot in your game, then yeah, it's probably not going to be, they're not going to be played as much. We do have an Alistair buff, so that's like the only proper support buff this patch. So we've got an Annie nerf, we've got a Thresh nerf, an Alistair buff, and we've got a Grievous Wounds buff, so that it would technically affect some enchanters, but not a significant amount. We'll talk about that one in a second. And then for tanks, we've got an Abyssal Mask minor buff overall. So let's go first talk about the Alistair. Alistair's been receiving buffs a lot over the past few patches and not really seen much of an improvement in win rate. This change will do nothing. I don't see why they bother. I think he floats around about a 49.5-ish win rate. I mean, I think they might be just trying to push him to 50, but I mean, this is like kind of a bit boring. I think they're just trying to help his early game out a little bit more, but will he get played more? I don't know. I don't think this is going to encourage that many people to play. 3 armor, 15 HP, nothing crazy. The next one is Annie. The E shield is getting nerfed on the later levels, so you can see on base on level 1 it's actually fine. It's exactly the same, and the same on the level 1. It's just when you start putting more points in it, the scaling's gonna come off. So once you hit level 9, the shield's gonna shield for 20 less. The big one is probably the cooldown is going up by 2 seconds, so you will notice it potentially a little bit more in the mid to late game. But honestly, it's not going to be a massive impact, and Annie's got the highest win rate in solo queue across all ELOs right now, so that's saying something. So she's pretty strong. I don't think this nerf is enough, honestly, to her. I think Annie's still going to be a strong pick, but we'll look at her in the tier list afterwards. Going through, Azir's getting a lot of buffs again after they Giga nerfed him for no reason. Graves, Callista's getting a buff, might see some higher play rate, especially in Plat Plus. Cat getting buffed, I think. Kha'Zix stuff, Lee Sin stuff, Ola stuff, Rama stuff, Sejuani stuff. Thresh, they are basically making it so when you land your Q, the refund is going from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. Now when you had like max rank in Thresh Q, and you had some cooldown reduction, you land your hook on an enemy champion, and then honestly like 2 seconds later you then would be able to hook again, and then hook again, and then hook again. So this is quite a big nerf in terms of like the chain reaction of hookage. This is also obviously going to affect him on the lower levels as well. So level 1 hook, even if you land it, it's going to be 1 second longer on cooldown. So it's quite a big nerf, really, particularly with that chain CC. I don't think his win rate was very good anyway in the lower ELOs. This was definitely a high ELO nerf. But we're going to definitely start seeing his win rate drop in the high ELO, and I don't think it was particularly that high. I agree that this was kind of annoying to deal with, but I think they could have probably given him a little buff in a different area just to kind of like make up for this chain CC change. But hey, it is what it is. Veigar's getting absolutely destroyed. So if you missed it a few patches ago, they buffed Veigar's Q and W range, and then they just this champion is now being absolutely gutted. His early game is really terrible now. AP ratio on the W from 100% down to 70 with 1 point. So kind of potentially forces you to put more points in W earlier, which you don't really want to do because you wanted to max E second, which is the stun. There's just, yeah, I don't know. And then they've nerfed his ulti as well by a significant amount. So it's kind of a disaster. I don't think Riot knows what the hell they're doing with Veigar. So it's really, as someone who likes playing Veigar, honestly, they've gutted Nami and now they're gutting Veigar. And it's just like, start gutting these champions I like playing, man. But it's what it is. A bunch of other challenges. So the Zeri's getting nerfed. Health growth per level going down by 15, which is quite significant. Shield absorption from the passive, so she was able to basically steal shields. That's going down by a significant portion as well. And then her ult is also getting nerfed. So Zeri's getting some giga nerfs, mainly because they don't want to see her in MSI, which is just around the corner, which is the mid-season invitational tournament, which is happening in London. Which I will apparently am going to. I haven't heard much more information from Riot, but I was invited, but I haven't heard any info. But if I'm going to MSI finals, so yeah, hopefully I won't see any Zeri when I'm there. Item changes. Death Stance is getting slightly changed. I don't know if this is a buff or a nerf. I don't buy it, so I don't care. But Abyssal Mask is something I've actually been picking up more recently on Rakan. So I don't like going the Shrillia's route on Rakan. I've been going Radiant Virtue and Rakan, and then the last couple of games I've been going Abyssal Mask, a second item. Why? Because my magic damage users were actually doing better than my AD carries. So it just enables them to carry, and once you get Abyssal Mask with the Radiant Virtue, you're roughly negating around about 20 magic resist on targets when you're basically quite close to them, which obviously you are when playing Rakan anyway, at least for the most part for the engage. So reducing 20 magic resistance from everyone around the area, I think, is a pretty significant number, especially when your AP users are doing quite well, and especially if the enemy team isn't by magic resist. I think it's a very strong item that people don't realize and don't pick it up. So Abyssal Mask, do look into that if you need magic resistance and your team has a lot of magic damage. Abyssal Mask is definitely a very strong item. Slight buff. In terms of the actual health received, mainly because they're buffing the prerequisite item on the catalyst, but they are also increasing the combined cost. So this item is going to be a little bit more annoying to buy now. So yeah, do take that in mind. It is going to be a bit of more of a pain to make the Abyssal Mask, unfortunately. Grievous Wounds is now going to be applied when the target is shielded. Apparently, I didn't even know this. So apparently, if you're shielded and you had Grievous Wounds applied to you, you weren't actually affected by Grievous Wounds. So I don't know how much health this was potentially mitigating or not mitigating, if that makes sense. But it's an interesting change. It's definitely going to potentially affect champions like Sona. We'll have to wait and see. It's kind of impossible to tell how much people were avoiding taking Grievous Wounds if they were shielded before they were then started taking damage and the shield was still alive. It's kind of complicated, but we'll have to see. But I can see the person that's going to be affected most in terms of support is going to be Sona, because she does the heal and shield combined. So we'll have to see how strong Sona was because of this lack of whatever this was. So big potential. Well, it's a big potential Sona nerf, but it's impossible, as I said, it's literally impossible to tell. I'll update in the comment section below. I'm gonna act like it's the same as what it is now. I've heard people say that this isn't going to be significant, but people have never been wrong in their lives, right? But we'll see. I'll have to update in the comment section below about this, because it's literally impossible to gauge what it's going to be like. EVRAM adjustments. But anyway, that's all of the changes. As I said, nothing too crazy. We'll go into the tier list now. We've got some minor changes here. So tier 5, we've now put Ashe in tier 5. Very sad. As a champion that, once again, all these champions I used to like playing, Riot keeps nerfing them. But yeah, Ashe support no longer viable. Do not play. It's a do not play. Win rate is not the worst. I think Misfortune at AD carry, or if Misfortune support is the worst thing that you can play. Ashe is like second worst or something. It's worse than Yuumi. Okay, that's how bad it is right now. So yeah, they nerfed her ultimate and stuff and made her more into an AD carry role, but she's not really much in an AD carry role still. So Riot has basically made Ashe a champion that no one's allowed to play. So yeah, fantastic. So Yuumi is I did move Yuumi down from tier 3 to tier 4 this patch. I didn't do a tier list for the previous patch. I do apologize. It's mainly because of Emilio and I wanted to test it out, and then some things happened in real life. But yeah, so Yuumi is in tier 4 basically, or tier 5. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. Tier 4, tier 5. You shouldn't be playing these champions anyway in tier 4, tier 5. But yeah, Yuumi, don't play. Lulu, don't play. The two over reliant on AD carries doing well. Particularly, once again, the tier list is for unranked to plat. And, you know, the lower you are, elo you are, the more you should avoid playing Yuumi, Lulu, and Milio, who's also in tier 3. So when he was released, it did seem potentially that he was OP. It kind of made me doubt myself that, you know, when I made that video like 3 or 4 weeks ago about saying, I'm worried about Milio. He kind of looks too basic. He's going to rely on your AD carry. But I did put like, you know, an asterisk saying, well, it depends on the base levels. Like if the campfire heals for a ridiculous amount, like 1,000,000 health per second, then obviously he's going to be tier 1. It did seem at first Milio was going to be tier 1 after the first day. Riot did actually nerf him, but actually I don't think those nerfs were actually warranted, if I'm going to be completely honest. My theory ended up being correct, that he is over reliant on AD carries performing, and a couple of champions can only be really played with him. Like we're talking like Jinx, Caitlyn, maybe Kalista, maybe Kog'Maw. I never really got to test many of those two champions because no one was playing those. The big ones were like the Caitlyn and the Jinx. Yes, if my Jinx was really, really good, like exceptionally better than the enemy bot lane, it was a stomp. I think I could have probably replicated the same result though with a Lulu. I honestly don't think there's a huge amount different between those two champions, between the Milio and the Lulu. I think Lulu is just slightly worse right now because Vayne is just not as good. I think if Vayne was better right now in the bot lane, I think Lulu would be like tier 3. But once again, and the same with Kog'Maw as well actually. But it's a shame, you know, no one in bronze can play Vayne or Kog'Maw. So yeah, like Lulu is kind of in a bad spot with the Yuumi, with the Milio. Milio is, I think he's just about holding on that 50-ish% win rate. But a lot of the people are saying, oh my god, Milio's going to be broken and stuff. And yeah, I fell for the initial hype. I kind of wanted him to work, because I do like playing enchanters and like seeing like Nami not doing particularly well. So yeah, him and Nami aren't looking too great. Enchanters as a whole generally aren't having a great time apart from 1 or 2 champions. But yeah, Nami and Milio aren't having a good time either, because like Nami doesn't excel in anything anymore. She used to excel in like lane poking, and then being able to like go into much more an enchanter kind of style, which Karma can't really facilitate. So like Karma does like great poking in lane, but she doesn't like facilitate the mid game and late game properly, whereas Nami was able to keep up in that enchantment department, but she can't anymore. So yeah, she's like, yeah, these champions are falling off. Zillion, I think I put him in tier 2 before. He's now dropped down to tier 3. Rel, I think, was tier 1. Nautilus, I think, was tier 2. I've moved those down. Alistair's also been moved down. Those tanks that were expected to perform slightly better, especially with all the Alistair buffs, just haven't kicked in and haven't worked. Mainly because like a couple of champions, and then he said it, and he spoiled my tier list. A couple of champions higher up are just excelling and being played way more often than they're just destroying these champions at the moment. And in the patch notes, they haven't addressed some of these kind of outliners, supporters that are doing particularly well. But I say they're doing particularly well, it's more like these champions are like, we'll talk about it more in a second, but basically like these tier 1 champions are like only tier 1 because the rest of the support champions are just like not as good as the other ones. But honestly, everything in tier 3 up needs to be buffed more, and tier 2 slightly more. I think like tier 1 right now is kind of like 2 seasons ago, maybe high tier 3, low tier 2. That's kind of how bad support's gotten overall. The whole overall power rate, it feels like, from my perspective, that support power has come down dramatically down over the last couple of seasons. So tier 1 right now honestly feels like maybe like low tier 2 a couple of years ago. So I think it's pretty important that you kind of like learn the tier 1 champions now to be able to keep up with the game state. Like Thresh is like in tier 3, but he is like pretty good in like high. I think he's like tier 2 roughly if you're in Diamond Plus. I think the rest of the stuff there I don't really recommend that you play. Tier 2 we have Blitzcrank's been moved down from tier 1 to tier 2. Zack's still kind of around. So is Mumu. Soraka, Senna, and Brand haven't been changed. I actually moved Vel'Koz up from tier 3 to tier 2. So Vel'Koz has been moved up to tier 2 mainly because of how many like high HP. Basically, there's a lot of health going on right now. There's a lot of mid laners ending up picking up a lot of HP. There's a lot of top laners picking up a lot of HP. A lot of junglers picking up a lot of HP. There's HP. There hasn't been a massive amount of resistances, I feel like, that's been happening. So yeah, Vel'Koz is kind of excelling a little bit more than he would usually do in the support role. Haven't seen too many games of him actually played in the support role. I think I've seen one this month. But overall, statistics are saying slightly otherwise in terms of that he is actually doing okay. Yeah, you can play him now. So yeah, Vel'Koz, viable. Not sure for how long. I would probably personally would rather stick with the Brand, but he is an option if you want that. So yeah, the enchanters that are kind of doing okay. Tier 2 ones, you've got Soraka and Janna. Nothing crazy here. Like I said, like the power level support's gone down, but these are two okay enchanters that you can play if you wish to play them. I think everything in tier 2 and up is doable in solo queue, but you should lean more towards these tier 1s. And the tier 1s haven't really changed. I don't think they were changed from the patch 2 patches ago. But Sona is the asterisk. I'm not 100% sure. I made that clear in the item section. We'll talk about her again in a second for the people that skipped the item section. Annie getting nerfed, but nothing significant. Honestly, I still feel like she's going to have a very high win rate. She might not necessarily be number 1, but she might end up being like number 2. Like that's like, yeah, she's going to be top, so like up the top 3. Zyra, very strong AP in all elos. She's my favorite to play, so that's nice. Hopefully they don't nerf her, because otherwise I won't have much left to play. But yeah, Zyra is definitely still a solid AP user that you can play in pretty much every game. Rakan is still doing very well, top 3 generally in high elo. Falls off ever so slightly maybe in the lower elos, but I still think he's a champion that you should definitely learn playing if you want to play a tank. I think go Radiant, Virtue, Rakan. Okay, so I think Rakan's win rate would be higher if people stop buying Shrillias and start buying Radiant Virtue, because you should only buy Shrillias on Rakan if you're snowballing the lane. If you're going even, or if you're behind, build him tank. You can even go Locket if you want to, but go tank Rakan, trust me, okay? Because you will not get to do anything if you go Shrillias when you're behind, okay? Alright, we got that. You will have some minor mana issues. That is something that you're going to have to get over, but yeah, just stop playing Shrillias Rakan, okay? Otherwise I will find where you live and I will sell the Shrillias and force you to buy tank, okay? Taric is something I've left in tier 1, which I'm not fully sure about because I don't see Taric. His play rate is still okay. It's like a quarter or a fifth of something like Rakan, but he seems to be winning games. I'm not fully sure if it's to do with people smurfing, but either way, it's a tier 1 or a tier 2 pick, okay? So Taric is definitely an option if you wish to learn. He's particularly good against hard engage, so he's an anti-engage champion. Don't pick him into anything else. So if you're up against like the Yamumu, the Zac, maybe a Blitzcrank, Rakan might be kind of tricky to land your stun, but if you can pre-cast your ulti just as Rakan's going in, you might get away with it. But yeah, generally into any other like engager other than Rakan, I think Taric generally does pretty well. And yeah, and about Sona is basically like, depending on how those grievous wounds towards shields works out, Sona could easily be tier 1 still, or she could actually fall down to tier 3. I'll update in the comment section if it ends up being dramatic for Sona, but we won't be able to find out properly for a couple of days. So yeah, well, I think it will be okay. I'm not overly concerned about it. I think worst case, I said tier 3, but it might honestly just be like tier 2. I think she's still going to be fine. If you want to play an enchanter, I still highly recommend Sona. Well, I hope this tier list helps you out. I am sorry again for not doing a tier list last 2 weeks ago, just because of real life stuff and Milio. I hope the Milio lovers aren't too upset that I put Milio in tier 3. If you are upset, well, deal with it. Yeah, I'll be streaming the new patch on Wednesday, the 5th of April, on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. So feel free to come say hi. Yeah, just say hi. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. And as always, stay cool. Stay very cool. And see you tomorrow for another video. Bye!